I remember John sending them to us early 2019. And then now, let's not talk about what happened from between then and now. But on our part, we did have now about 300 plus items digitized and cataloged and put them on our digital library online. I think did Marcos show them the link? So it's
only to John.
It's in our special collection, digital collection online. So everyone in the world can access them, can find them, use them for research, study, for inspiration. So in a way, the items here join our collection, but at the same time, they themselves also stay as a cluster with Mr. Ken's name. So in fact, his legacy does live, through the collection. And then I would say the items, as you see them, they are pretty by themselves, and also there are some historical and research value. So I would expect down the road we will have a lot more exhibitions with them, and also with our own collection, our original collection. Now they are our collection already, so I shouldn't say our and theirs, right? So, but then I would say for this very first time we exhibit using Mr. Ken's collection, we in fact, it's thanks to Christine's interesting idea, we put his road to Hong Kong in the center of the narrative. And for that, in fact, I would like to show great gratitude to John that he helped coordinate all this and actually connect you guys to with us to come here for this gathering. So thank you, John. And then also thank Christine for all these very interesting ideas. It's a lot of hard work. You may not know how much work she and colleagues put in this exhibition. And lastly, I would like to thank John and in fact Angus again for choosing HKUS Library to be the home of this very special collection from Mr. Ken. Thank you.
We got in touch with, it was through Jonathan Watkins and Peter Gelder that basically came and asked me basically about how this, if we would be interested in having this collection, because we have a large map collection, which is focused on Western printed maps of China. They tend to be from 1500 to 1700. But it's all, I think, also about really networks of people. I mean, all of you are connected with Walter through the FCC or activity that he was involved with, friendship. And for me, that network is basically through, Jonathan Watkins and the map collecting, basically, kind of network. And we were delighted that we could expand the collection beyond these Western maps only of China. But we also thought that it had a meaning, also a scholarly meaning. Whenever I've been talking with John about this exhibition, he said, I would like an exhibition that is not just purely a personal homage to Walter, but also has a scholarly component that is really significant. His maps, the most significant part of his collection are maps of Shanghai. He has a very large one. But he also has maps that basically even kind of fortuitous, even kind of a serendipity effect, that a match with our collection. And these two are the example. So we have a collection of Republican era maps of China, different kinds, provinces, cities. These are Chinese maps of Shanghai from 1947. And Walter brought his Western English version of maps of Shanghai in 1947, same publisher. Basically, if you look at the maps, the city view, it's identical, only in two languages. But then you can also see the differences in terms of how they're marketed. I mean, the Chinese version is really like countryside, beauties, and the Western version is like modern Shanghai. And we also, all the maps here are maps bought by Walter, beside this one and beside that map of Hong Kong. Because basically, even though he was so connected to Hong Kong, that was not really part of his major map collecting. So when I was thinking how to do this map exhibition from the point of view of like map scholarship. I'm thinking, okay, maybe we focus on map of Shanghai. We have a special thing on map of Shanghai. But for this first time, also because this is connected with friendship, we decided, and that's thanks to Christine that got involved, to make it really more personal, really, this road to Hong Kong, this travel from New York that you see in many maps to Hong Kong through the posters, and through all the places where Walter Lee, he was connected. Right? So that's what we display here. That's what we display here. And then I would have Christine saying some more about the curation.
Here's very interesting because Gabi sends some review and me, so we can stand everywhere in this exhibition. So there's no starting point or end point. And I think, first of all, thank you for your trust. and maybe I need to say some personal words as well, because how this all started was I was just asked to give an advice for a proposed exhibition. And how it ended up is I was totally involved in it. And I remember then you asked John, and then John came, and then we started imagining this exhibition, and from there on, it rolled on. And and maybe here, John, you can help me a bit with these friendship stories, because they play quite an interesting role within many of these objects. And I don't go through the whole exhibition because it doesn't make sense, and it takes too long, and there's too much to discover. But there were moments in these conversations we had, for example, the one with Roger in the FCC, when you talked about the Kennedy protection group. And so this refers a lot with the image of Panem, what everybody grouped in front of this image, like how a city is changing and what can you participate, how can you change cities. And I think like these 20 years of struggle is quite an interesting story, which you can all listen to on the recordings in the anchor. And another story which always repeated, and I think Marco explained it, there's this Belgium map, which is one of the most important maps of Hong Kong, I think from 1841, which is from the HKUST collection. And Walter did not collect any map of Hong Kong because he said it's too expensive. And so we thought we need to complement it with the Hong Kong map. And another maybe little side story is that we found this New York map where he was born, but he was born in Brooklyn, he emphasized. And he, in this little map, there was a ticket of $7 US raincoat. So even though I think he was quite a rich person, I mean, obviously, he kind of specifically chose what to buy. And I think these little stories behind this collection we tried a bit to show and to reveal that shows the person that collects, and that tells you a lot about the collection and what is now in this archive and how to deal with it. And at the same time, it's made for students because this will be open for students for 4 months. So they come in and go out, and maybe they can get some inspirations on how to deal with maps. For example, there's this Java map from the Dutch colonizers. So maybe, all these treasures lie here, and they need to be studied and revealed and reworked artistically or research based. And maybe they find some interesting points to focus on. So this was more or less the idea, which guides you a bit through. And obviously here's Hong Kong, then we go to Southeast Asia, and then we have Hong Kong over there. John, you can add with these connections of that. I think that's...
I'd just like to say, I think it's just brilliant how you've woven it together with the theme of, the road to Hong Kong, which also then wraps in the Walter's collection of airplanes, and it's really, really nicely done. And I think it took greater minds than ours to come up with that idea. So it's really lovely.
So John, do you want to say a word?
Thanks, Debbie. This actually goes back many years now, because Walter, for anyone who sat around the bar of the FCC, heard about the mythical map collection. And we all heard about this, but we never actually saw them, except for the dealers who sold to him. And there were many. There weren't just Jonathan Wattis. There was a collector in Bangkok, or should I say a dealer in Bangkok. There was a a dealer in New York. He also used to buy online. And when when Walter died, there was his flat, which was full of things. And as Andy and myself and Annie and Edwin over here, and a few other people who aren't here, Chris Slaughter, we found that his flat was very crowded with things. And as we went through his possessions, we found many, many things. And we all looked in despair because there were just piles of newspapers and piles of old accounts and records, because Walter kept everything. As we sifted through his possessions, we found the gems. And there were a lot of personal things, like letters from his mum and his brother. His brother wrote to him every week with a cutting from Brooklyn. You know, the very famous journalist Pete Hamill had a weekly column, and Ed would cut out and send it to Walter. Poignantly, many of these letters were unopened because in the end Walter didn't cope very well. As you know, he was an alcoholic, and he freely admitted to this in his last years. And obviously he wasn't really coping, although he coped very well, actually. You know, he was on top of his finances. He actually was on top of his attire, wasn't he, Andy? Always looked immaculate.
Yeah.
And when we went through possessions, you know, we sort of basically had little areas where things were. So we had an area where the maps started going, and as they accumulated, we needed to buy some drawers, and we started putting the maps in the drawers. So let me just say very, very briefly, I don't want to talk too much, but the collection actually comprises maps and some of the objects that you see here. So aeroplanes. Walter had a collection of aeroplanes, and also books, usually with a travel theme, some with maps inside them, and also posters. And when we started talking about this exhibition with Marco and Peggy and the team 4 years ago, in that time we then had the protests and COVID, which interrupted everything. This exhibition should have been 4 years ago. We said, you know, I said actually a central piece, because of the sort of travel theme and Walter's idea of collecting. He collected things of places that he worked in. So Jakarta, Bangkok, Singapore, no, not Singapore, Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, and Hong Kong. They've all got a link to where he worked, and he worked for Chase Manhattan Bank. But a central one was this poster here, because it's just such a fabulous poster. And it's a really important photograph because it captures both the new and the old Hong Kong, the squatter areas on the side of the hills, the Tiger Balm Garden, and then the harbour. So when we met Christine this year, the idea was to do this sort of travel theme, and then we got the recordings of some of his friends. And they tell, if you listen to the recordings, you'll basically hear all about Walter, how he grew up in Brooklyn, how he was involved in the Kennedy Road Protection Concern Group to stop a development by Hopewell Holdings, and his life as being a member of the FCC, and you know, his daily routine of he'd get there and then go for what he would say a walk, and he'd be going down to Propaganda, the famous gay bar, at the very end of the night. So, you know, it's a really poignant exhibition, and I hope there'll be a follow-up exhibition with some of the other great possessions that were in the maps. I think totaled what, 180 or
200 something.
Yeah, 200.
Yeah.
You can check them there.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming, everyone, and thank you, Walter, for putting it all together. Yeah.